Hello, everybody. TGMBA here. You guys, and by you guys, I mean like two or three of you, always hound me about content. So I just want to hop on here and kind of explore today. This is just a test. It probably won't even go live on YouTube. It'll probably be one of those things where I'll have a link and you can only really view it if you have the link. So if I send you the link in a text or an email, um, because it's gonna be sloppy. I'm testing things out. I got a new mic here. When I move it, who knows what's even gonna happen? But I went out and got a new mic. Some of you already know that. Um, I'm gonna try out today using Zoom because it's the most affordable, easiest way to kind of have my face on the screen because I want to share my screen and do some stuff today. We're gonna go over some Eastern Conference tier list. I mean, you're probably familiar with that. Um, but yeah, if you see me kind of looking down at my phone, not only do I have notes in here, but there's probably going to be a time where I'm going to need to look up how to do something. And that's what that's going to be for. Um, so again, I'm going to be looking for a lot of feedback. So if this sound is terrible and you happen to be one of like the 3 or 4 people who listen to this, probably going to be like my family and like 2 or 3 friends. Maybe if I buy her dinner, my girlfriend. But please let me know. Give me feedback. If it's blurry, let me know. Chances are I'm gonna see it. I'm gonna watch it before I even send it to you guys, so I don't get completely flamed. But um, so I'll see if it's blurry, if this sounds absolute garbage. But any feedback you have, whether it's how I did it, um, I know that I hit up a couple people who do things like this podcast, and I asked them for some advice. That's where I got the advice on what mic to buy. Um, I got advice on kind of some different things to use, but I'm going to try Zoom today because I'm most familiar with Zoom. If there's anybody out there that doesn't know me that well and for some reason has made it past the first 2 minutes of this, I'm a teacher, so I'm like a Zoom expert when it comes to the pandemic and teaching. So this is just what I'm most comfortable with. That being said, I'm going to share my screen. And what I want to do with the NBA season just a day away is I want to kind of take a look at the NBA Eastern Conference, spend some time on each team, and do a little tier list. So this is a tier list that I got right off the internet. The categories that they set me up with are championship contenders, playoff participants, borderline playoff teams, not good enough, and try again in a few years. I think those are pretty good. I am going to change a couple things probably. The championship contenders, when I start sorting these out, to me, championship contenders is who has a realistic chance, injury free, of winning a ring this season. Not just coming out of the Eastern Conference, but actually winning a ring. Um, Playoff participants, I'm going to change that to playoff locks. This way, I have some different categories. Like playoff locks for me are teams that will be in the playoffs this year. And I know that some of you listening already are kind of probably going to go along with me and kind of have your own views on this. But to me, a playoff lock means like there's no chance of them even playing in that 7 or 8 seed game, not even in that bubble game, like on the bubble. So borderline playoff teams, I'm going to change to bubble teams. So although I may end up, because it's a tier list, putting more than 4 teams in this category, there are teams that I think are going to end up in that 7 to 10 range or around there. Not good enough is fine. Those are teams that I don't even think get to play in the bubble, but they'll be competitive. Maybe with 2 weeks left in the season, they got a shot. And then they say in the last category, try again for a few years. We're just going to say lottery teams. I know lottery teams technically, with the way it works now, is any team that doesn't make the playoffs is going to have a chance. But we'll put lottery teams as just those bottom of the barrel teams that really are in rebuilding mode, don't really have anywhere to go. So I'm going to go in order here and let's bang it out. Like I said, I can't read. I know I'm going to get flamed a little bit, but this is just a test. I have my notes here. I'm going to be looking down. I would love to, as the season goes on, obviously these things are going to improve. I want to be more energetic. I bought a mic specifically, by the way, that to have guests. Like, it was a mic I could have bought that was one directional. I bought an omnidirectional mic, meaning if I had someone sitting on the other side of this mic, it would pick up both our sounds from both sides. So I am going to invite guests, hopefully spice this up a bit, do some editing. Right now we're shooting one time all the way through. So I'll be talking for a while. I got my water here. Let's get right into it because I'd like to make this as quick as possible. All right. So let's start with the Hawks right away. Atlanta Hawks, a team that pretty much bought back a lot of the same guys from last year. They really didn't do anything. They didn't do anything crazy in the offseason, but sometimes less is more. So you lose pretty much nobody. As I'm looking at my notes here, you lose Chris Dunn, former Chicago Bull, represent, and Tony Snell, another former Chicago Bull. So if you are on the Bulls, you are gone. The Bulls got rid of you for a reason, and so has every other team that those two guys have played on. As far as who they gained, it's nobody too significant. They got Jalen Johnson in the draft. I think the biggest thing they gained since the playoffs ended is just that experience. You have a bunch of guys go deep into the playoffs, kind of the emergence of Trae Young, the villain of MSG, and you come back with playoff experience, which is huge. The top of the Eastern Conference, which we'll get to a little bit later, is very top heavy. Outside of the one or two teams that we all know who those are, it's going to be a dogfight. And I think being a 3 or 4 seed and going into the season with some reps from last year, if you will, is going to be huge because I think being a 3 or 4 seed is going to be giant. I had a conversation earlier today about another team that we're going to talk about a little bit later and how important I think it's going to be for them to get that 3 or 4 seed. I think once you drop to that 5 seed, it's going to be tough to even make a Cinderella run. And I say that because unless you're one of those two teams, I think it's going to be tough this year. But if you're at the 3 or 4 seed, all you got to do is win 2 series. You just gotta come up. So that being said, I'm going to put the Hawks in a playoff lock. I can't put them as a championship contender just yet. Barring, you never know. We don't root for injuries, but injuries could happen. They could take that leap. But I would be absolutely shocked if they were crowned NBA championships, and that's what that top category is for. The Celtics, I think, are in that same category. And I know people are going to say, you know what, that's a bubble team. They're not quite there with the Hawks, but Jaylen Brown is going to be healthy. You have Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Your team is going to be very good. I personally think that the Dennis Schroeder signing, totally underrated. Made himself into a meme, absolutely fumbled the bag, but if you have him coming in replacing Kemba, who we'll talk about later, Dennis is healthier. He's younger. Does he do things a little bit differently than Kemba? Yes. But outside of Tatum and Brown, they didn't really have too many guys that can score the ball for them. And I think Kemba can come in and be that guy. And on a 1-year contract at that little money after being made fun of all off season, you know my man's trying to ball out. He's trying to get that money back. He's betting on himself, and I can't even say that he's betting on himself like other players do by balling out. He had no choice. He thought he was getting a bag. He fumbled it, and now he's here, and he's got attempt number 2 at trying to get a bag on a team that, might I add, he's going to have a better chance to. When he was with LeBron, the Lakers, after having an amazing time at OKC, which is what got him on everyone's radar. He goes to the Lakers. He tries to get a ring. It doesn't work out there. He kind of takes a backseat and loses out on a bunch of money. You go to Boston, where you're the third option scoring the ball on a team that is coming off an underperforming year, and you get them to a higher seed in the East and maybe make some noise again, the Celtics in the playoff. That's going to be used for him. I think Brad Stevens kind of got an absolute steal in his debut as kind of a basketball executive over there. I don't know much about the new coach, but I think when you got those three guys, you got Marcus Smart, who was up and down last year, skill wise and injury wise. You bring him back. And I think you're going to be okay. I think you are a playoff lock. I know some people probably have them as more of a bubble team, but I really think as long as the supporting cast can step up, Robert Williams takes another step, I think I have them as a playoff lock. Moving on. Brooklyn Nets. I mean, this is one of those things that if you watch basketball, I'm not going to spend too much time. I think personally, it's more fun to talk about all these middle teams and kind of the direction they're headed, especially in this test podcast. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the obvious, but Brooklyn Nets, at the time I'm recording this podcast, Kyrie Irving is still not out. He's not going to play. He's not going to play home or away games. They decided it was best that he stays away from the team. From a basketball standpoint, that is a loss. You never want to lose Kyrie Irving, but basketball is also a team sport. So having this guy come in and playing half the games and kind of building two different chemistries. You're building a chemistry with a team without Kyrie Irving, and then you're building a whole new team chemistry in minutes with and without him. That was going to be tough, let's be honest. But all that being said, they do not budge for me in any type of ranking or power rankings. And here's why. Because I know a lot of people out there are going to say they make jokes, they do, and I get it. And they're going to say, no Kyrie Irving, Nets take a step down. Here's why I'm here to say absolutely no shot. 2 years ago, if someone told you, which would have sounded crazy, by the way, 2 years ago, someone said, hey, James Harden and Kevin Durant, who, by the way, are the two of the top scorers in NBA history, let alone modern history. If you say they team up in Brooklyn, that's a championship contender, period. You don't even know that Kyrie's there. You don't even have to know the other three starters, let alone the whole how they round out the roster. If you say those two guys are together, you're having a chance in the ring. Enough said. I said I'm not going to get into it. I'm not going to spend too much time on the Nets, but you add guys like Paul Millsap, Patty Mills, Party Mills. Shout out Kevin Riley. Listen, you're going to be a good team, and it's going to be similar to Lakers, where health, filling out the roster with older guys, is never going to be great. You did lose Spencer Dinwiddie. You lost DeAndre Jordan, who, let's be honest, was a shell of himself, although I do like him as a player. He goes over to the other side of the conference with the Lakers. But I still think you're going to be good. I think as long as guys outside of Kyrie are available health-wise and producing at least a fraction of what they could, I think that's all Kevin Durant and James Harden are going to need. Charlotte Hornets. LaMelo Ball's Hornets. That's all we need to say here. I was back and forth in this one. I was kind of taking notes before I started, but I think for me, they're going to be a bubble team with the potential of maybe becoming a playoff team that does not have to play one of those bubble games, depending how much of a leap LaMelo takes. I think what players like Luka have done over the past couple of years and Trae Young kind of makes it expected for LaMelo to keep taking a big jump year after year. And I think he's the type of player who can take that step and make that jump. But let's be honest. I mean, I'm going to jump sports here, but athletes are getting better quicker. And I'll say this because of Justin Jefferson is a perfect example. Justin Jefferson came out, first guy in forever, broke so many records, like all these rookie records. And going into fantasy drafts, for example, this year, and I'm only talking fantasy draft because it's a good way to kind of understand where I'm going with this. People are saying, you still can't go high on a rookie receiver. You got Jamar Chase coming in. You know what? Temper your expectations. He's a rookie outside of Justin Jefferson last year. How often do rookies come into the league and ball out right away? And what is Jamar Chase doing 5 or 6 weeks in the season? He's balling out, breaking all those records, being up there, doing it quicker than Justin Jefferson. I think the same thing in basketball. Rookies used to have 3 or 4 years before you even thought about calling them a bust. Now those top 5 picks, if they're not averaging 15 points a game at the very least, they're a bust. they can be averaging 20, and today's NBA Twitter is going to say they're not leading their team. They're not doing this. First of all, pump the brakes, people. We need to start relax with the bust after like 3 weeks in the season. Secondly, um, back to the Hornets and LaMelo Ball, because let's be honest, they're going to go as he goes. Um, Listen, I think he makes a jump. I think he's going to continue to get better. He is not someone that's going to give you 30 points a night. So we'll see now that the hype is going to die down and people are going to expect the team to make a jump. We got to see what else they put around him. I mean, you get Kelly Oubre, who I like as a player, but you also lose Devontae Graham, Malik Monk to the Lakers. Um, I just think for me, they're a bubble team, a low end bubble team, because if they're going to make the playoffs, not only do they need Ball to be brilliant again, those role players need to step up. Last year, to me, is just their ceiling, which was going. I forget who was, but they lost in the bubble. And I think kind of that's their ceiling. And I think they have the potential to reach that again, but I don't see them taking a step forward just yet. I still think they're a couple moves, a couple years away. Let's move on to the Bulls. My Bulls. Playoff lock, no question about it. And it's not me buying into the preseason hype, which has been through the roof. All the highlights all over the place. It's more me just believing in that roster and what they put together. And Zach Levine has improved literally every year he's been in the league. I will reluctantly say that I was a downer of him getting to this point. I thought he was a very good player at the time. He was in the Butler trade. I thought it was a nice piece. I didn't think much of it. But it was an athletic guy, the dunk contest, all that. But he has legitimately improved as a scorer every single year. And that is not just me blowing smoke. Like, look up the stats. He has become a better player in the NBA. He's become more efficient on top of that. So it's not that he's just taking more shots, jacking more shots up. He's become a more efficient player. Um, and now you put guys around him that are just like Lonzo Ball. He could have fit in free agency with any team. He went to the Bulls. I love the signing. He's a guy that can fit in anywhere. He's improved his 3-point shot every year he's been in the league. He's a defensive stud. He's a playmaker. He's going to move up tempo. Here for the Lonzo Levine lobs. Here for him. You got Vooch, one of the most underrated centers in the league. You got DeMar DeRozan, probably an overpay, but listen, every single year that there's a big free agent, Chicago's name gets mentioned. The first couple of weeks, the person's a free agent, and then just absolutely just you never hear from them again. I don't know what it is. Um, no free agent's going to go to Chicago, and that's the bad thing about these smaller market teams. And I know there's people out there that rightfully so will laugh because Chicago is a big market, but for whatever reason, nobody wants to sign with the Bulls in free agency. Hopefully, this is a start. People see that roster, they want to go there. But until then, I'm with it. Like, sell your soul to become relevant again, because that's all it takes. It takes a couple playoff series wins and you're back. Talk about that with the Knicks later, but you get a couple wins, you put a respectable team out there, whole life changes. You got trade things that can open up. You become a more attractive free agent destination. In today's NBA, hey, you can just like player empowerment, right? Just force a trade. The more stars you get, the more people are going to want to come there. But even with the roster as it is right now, I think that the Bulls have to be a playoff lock. And I didn't even mention Alex Caruso, things like that. Patrick Williams is going to take that next leap this year. Really good rookie last year. Maybe even, in my opinion, should be put in the starting lineup. I'm pretty sure that's the direction they're going to go. But I think there's no doubt that you put him at that starting lineup. Let's move on to the Cavs. Not good enough for his lottery team. I'm going to go lottery team. I like a lot of the players on the Cavs, and I'm sure anybody who is a big basketball person would probably agree with me here as far as I just don't think anyone knows what they're doing, right? So I think that their plan is to get a bunch of nice pieces. Um, I guess, stack the front court with as many bodies as possible, which does nothing but hurt them. I mean, I could just rip on the Cavs when it comes down to it. They go and they get Laurie marketed about what I believe it was after. Someone's gonna have to check that, and please feel free to call me out. I think it was after the draft. So you take Evan Mobley, um, who is gonna hopefully be a nice piece for you, and you're like, okay, let's make him develop. Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, weird fit. Let's see how it goes. And then you toss in Laurie Markkinen. Okay, and then the thought process has to be, okay, I'm not sure where they're going here. Maybe they're setting up for something. And then you think through the roster and you're like, okay, well, we also have Kevin Love. And you just really start to scratch your head. And it stinks because you do have, I'm all in on Sexland. I'm all in on Darius Garland and Colin Sexton. I think the talks around the NBA circles, and it's NBA circles, I mean, who I follow on Twitter, because let's be real, I'm not a celebrity here. I'm not in these circles. But is that Garland's the truth. People love him. Players love him. Veteran players in this league say he's going to be very good. Steph Curry, I forget. I would love to give credit, but I know Steph Curry did some things with him this offseason and was absolutely raving about him. Thinks he's going to be an absolute stud, um, with the ball in his hands primarily as a playmaker point guard. Puts Colin Sexton in a weird place. I think he's somebody who is gone by the deadline. If I had to put money on it, that's what I would say. I would say he's gone by the deadline. But it's just a weird team, man. Like, you just look at him. I like Isaac Okoro. I think he's a good wing player. Like, I do think they have nice pieces. I just think they're going to be a lottery team because it's just bad fits. And I think that they're going to be somebody who's very active in the trade market, because just like when we talked about the Bulls, although the Bulls are a big market, Cleveland is about as small of a market as you can get, but it's not exactly a place players have been begging to go to since LeBron left. So I think the only way you're going to get better is trade for a player. I think you do have pieces, and that core of Jared Allen, Garland, I'm going to toss Sexton in there, even though, like I said, I don't think he stays long term. Okoro, nice young piece, Mobley. I do think you are going to be a good basketball team. I think you need to take these pieces that, in my opinion, don't fit that well, which is marketing, who you just got, like I said, um, Sexton, and just try and flip them for either future assets to kind of prepare for when this group of top tier teams are done with their reign, or just kind of, hey, you know what? You want to be Cleveland, you want to just be relevant again. Trade those guys, see if you can get good, solid starters now for it. And you know what? Be in bubble, be in NBA mediocrity where nobody wants to be. Just play for that. So that's going to be the choice I think Cleveland has to make this year. Moving on, Detroit Pistons. Joe Ritchie, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. I believe that they are going to be a lottery team. I think it is in their best interest to be a lottery team. I think you get Cade Cunningham, looks like he's going to be a stud. Um, you put him on a team though that has two rookies last year in Isaac Stewart and Sadiq Bey, who played extremely well and extremely underrated, by the way. I mean, if you're not like a NBA, like a frequent NBA watcher, you did not hear these guys' names once on national television or ESPN, but they did ball out. They had pretty good years, but just that overall roster that they have in Detroit just is not enough for me to even move them to the not good enough. I think them and the Cavs and maybe one other team's gonna be coming up pretty soon are gonna be those two or three teams that are just at the bottom of not only the Eastern Conference, but in all honesty, I think two of these teams that we're gonna talk about are gonna probably be bottom five in the NBA. Let's talk about the Pacers. Pacers, when I was doing this, I did this off for a little bit by myself. And the Pacers are a weird team to rank because you have just so many pieces that you just don't really know where they're going to go. So first of all, you have Rick Carlisle and I'm having a fly here. You have Rick Carlisle that's going to come in um, with a Karis LeVert, who's making progress from all the unfortunate injuries and all the stuff that went on last year, and he ends the season with a back problem. And now you have him back. Um, so like you want to say they're getting back to full strength, but someone on this core is always seems to be injured, whether it's excuse me, whether it's Karis LeVert, whether it's Brogdon, who I love 60-40-40 guy, just do 60-40-40 seasons like it's nothing and nobody talks about it. But you got Malcolm Brogdon, Karis LeVert, all these dudes that just you just got to stay healthy. I'm gonna put him in the bubble. I'm not gonna talk too much more about it because I think I'm gonna revisit. Because at the end, when I take a look at this, my playoff locks, my bubble teams, people might be swapping once I see them head to head. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna run through these last ones very quickly, like quick couple sentences, because it's a test pod, and if you've made it this far, great. I know a lot of you probably haven't. Those of you still listening, I do appreciate you. Um, Make sure you, if you do listen up to this part, you kind of hit me up and say, give me some, be like, hey, you made it this far. Give the listeners some more credit too. Um, I'm gonna go through these quick because it is a test. I wasn't looking to do any editing, so one, this is straight through, so I don't get to stop and look at my notes that I made here without it being super awkward. Two, it's 1:44 in the morning, and I just got home maybe 11:30 from going to family's house. So we're just gonna bang these last couple out. I'll spend some time with some of the local teams and the big teams, but there are some teams where I might just say toss them in a tier and get going. All right, so Heat is a team I'll talk about a little bit just because I love the Heat and I love what they did. Jimmy Butler is my dude as a playoff lock. You have Jimmy Butler, you have Bam, good defender. Jimmy Butler, we all know about him. We all know what he's about. He's gonna play defense, and if you're not gonna play defense, he's gonna give it to you. So you got Kyle Lowry, who fits in Miami. Feels like he should have been in Miami with that culture, how they run their team, how you got to play defense, how you play hard nosed. Larry's the epitome of that at point guard. Goran Dragic didn't get done last year. You bring in Larry, another vet, um, kind of fits that mold even a little bit better. You bring in PJ Tucker, who I'm going to talk about now and on this next team coming up because I think it's a huge loss to the Bucks and a great signing for Miami. Um, they're just creating a bunch of dogs. Anybody who knows me knows that they're going to be the team that if I could pick, I would love to see them upset a series or two and win the East. They're just going to be one of my favorite teams to watch this year. Bucks, championship contenders, let's be honest. They're coming back from winning a championship. Giannis went supernova. I do think that they need to add a piece. I think you lose PJ Tucker. Um, I know that people are gonna say, like, he is not. Let's get this straight. He's not a KD stopper or anything like that. Like he's not. He's not that kind of dude anymore. But him making a guy like KD, there's a huge difference between KD dropping an easy 30 and a hard 30. Yes, I know you say, okay, 30 points is 30 points. But when PJ Tucker's on a guy like KD and playing the defense that he did on KD throughout that whole finals, he is making him work. Maybe makes KD take some plays off on defense. Maybe he's passing up the ball to take a breather on offense a couple times. Listen, it came down to a toenail of KD for Brooklyn to win that series. Who knows? It's a game of possessions, especially in the playoffs. If PJ Tucker can just make it tough on a dude, that's huge. I think they do have Dante DiVincenzo coming back, who is also I would say, an above average defender, but he doesn't give you the versatility on defense that a guy like PJ Tucker did. So I do not think they're done. I think they will make a move before the break similar to how they made the move to bring PJ Tucker in. I think they're gonna have to make a move this season to bring another guy like that in. Because I don't think Grayson Allen or George Hill are gonna do that for you. But I do think if they make that move, they'll be okay. Knicks, baby. Knicks are up next. Nick, I went back and forth. This is probably one of the other hardest teams to rank. So I think I'm going to put them in the bubble team. We get a lot of slack for this, but here's why. Tibbs, absolute GOAT. Posted him on my Instagram story today. His yelling and his with playing defense, with practicing hard, kind of old school NBA attitude. Usually has a shelf life in the NBA, especially nowadays, it's getting shorter by kind of the decade, if you will. Every 10 years or so, it's just his life on NBA teams getting shorter. After 2 or 3 years, players don't want to hear that. He comes in, he breaks a young team, he makes them competitive. He's done it before. And then after a year or two, they're like, okay, we're competitive. Like, get a coach in here that just wants to put in a system, that doesn't want to do defensive drills at practice. I think what does help them is Julius Randle is a budding superstar, but he doesn't give me that superstar vibe as far as I don't want to practice. I actually watched a great article. I've read a great article, excuse me, in the Athletic. No, in the Players Tribune. Sorry, because it was written by Julius Randle about him and Kobe. Definitely worth a read. Great read actually. It's about his work ethic and how he kind of takes that from Kobe. And anything you read on the Knicks being the home team, you get a lot of stuff that pops up. It says he is like an amazing worker. So I do think he continues his trip. I actually think as I'm looking at this, I convinced myself that they're a playoff lock as I'm looking at the teams we have left. I think that Julius Randle needs to make that huge step. As I plug my laptop in here. Give me one moment. With our fixes as we go. This way I can stop rushing a little bit. I was at 3%, and if it died and I recorded this for like an hour or so, I would have been very upset. I'm bad at you change the background color here. Oh man. Oh, that's just that. Okay. So yeah, give me the Knicks at a playoff lock. Magic. I'm gonna put them as a lottery team. I loved that they got Jalen Suggs in the draft. I wasn't as I was watching the draft, which seems like forever ago. I did not think he was going to drop to there, but I think dropping to there was probably actually good for him and his career. But I think they will be a lottery team when it comes down to it. So let me take a look before we get to those last three teams. We have 3, 4, 5 playoff blocks, 2 contenders. That's 7 right there. One of these teams will end up being in the bubble. Like I said, it's going to kind of be a little loose here. Hornets, Pacers, I see more as definite bubble teams. So, of course, for these playoff locks, I have may drop into bubble teams, but I do not see these bubble teams being a top 6 seed, where as the 7 teams in there now, I would not be slightest bit shocked if I'd be shocked if whichever one doesn't make it, it's going to shock me. We don't have anyone that's not good enough range, because that means I don't think you're going to be absolutely terrible. Maybe I'll move some people later on. But let's get to the Sixers. Reported 2 days ago that Ben Simmons has shown up. Now, whether it is because the story was dying out and he needs to become a distraction, and you can't really distract from sitting on your couch at home because people will forget about you. The story will die for tomorrow's news. Maybe it's him coming in and being like, I'm going to show up to practice and dog it. Whatever the case may be, I'm going to put them on here based on Ben Simmons playing to whatever extent that may be, which means they are obviously a playoff lock. And I mean, there's not much to say that hasn't been regurgitated all over social media and everywhere else. You saw Ben Simmons is going to play. You sign Andre Drummond, who I'm sorry is a good rebounder, but that's about it. Weird signing. He's good for a couple Shaq and a Fool highlights a year and grabbing a couple 25 to 30 fucking rebound games, which is insane to even think about. There you're saying that a guy can have grab 25 rebounds and not be valuable, but to an extent, that's as a product of today's NBA. You lose George Hill, you lose a nice veteran, you lose whole locker room chemistry. Forget about players. That locker room is torched. They're the main story for the past 3 months in the NBA. Until Kyrie Irving decides to not get vaccinated and take over that thing a little bit. But you know what? Kyrie takes the limelight away and they tell him he can't play. Ben Simmons next day. You know what? I'm gonna report news story back in Philly. So Doc Rivers over there has. I'm not jealous of the position he's in, which would be in this year. Um, Raptors, lottery team, Wizards, bubble. And before I talk about these teams, let me adjust some things. I can't leave a tier that has absolutely nobody in it. So, 3, 6, 7, we got 8 in playoff locks and contenders. That is me saying that I think those are going to be the 8 playoff teams. Bubble teams ended up not really being bubble teams because realistically there'd be 2 in here that I think would lose to 2 in the playoff locks teams. So I'm gonna move 1 team out. If I had a team out of these 3, out of the Hornets, Pacers, Wizards, that ends up being out, I guess the easiest way would be to talk my way through it and talk about the Wizards first. So the Wizards have a bunch of signings. I mean, talk about a roster shakeup. You lose Russell Westbrook, which don't get me started. We'll talk about that when we talk about the Lakers. But you had Spencer Dinwiddie, good player. You add KCP. Lakers gonna miss him a ton. Good role player. Harrell, depends what day of the week you ask me. Good role player needs to be in a certain spot, I think, and because they have not played all together, I don't even have a prediction on how it's gonna work there. Kuzma, I think he will reinvent himself and be a valuable, again, role player. Nothing special, but I think he can go in there and he has a purpose and do his job. Chemistry, that's all it is. I mean, Bradley Beal has proven time and time again that he is a top 10 to 15 player in this league. But he has not proven that he can carry a team. He's had questionable people around him, from John Wall to Westbrook. Him and John Wall when John Wall was healthy, putting out very competitive teams. Since John Wall has not been himself and started with the injuries, they immediately plummeted. You kind of got back to being competitive last year with Westbrook. Now you flip Westbrook for a bunch of role players. I think they're going to be better. I think if I had to drop a team out, I'm actually going to drop the Hornets out. Like I said, I think the Hornets are just a case of amazing ceiling last year. But I mean, like, did a great last year, exceeded my expectations last year that I had for them before in the preseason last year. But I just think that that ceiling is either they're going to tap it again or they're going to come up short. So I think they dropped to not good enough. Just for fun to even out these tiers a little bit, I'm going to say that if I had to pick a team from the lottery team to bump up to not good enough, I mean, part of me wants to go with Nick Nurse and the young guys that they added in Toronto through the draft of Scotty Barnes and Precious from Miami and just say that they're always somewhat competitive. Part of me wants to move them up to the not good enough. Um, Part of me wants to be all in on Jared Allen and Sexland and the young core they're building in Cleveland to just get some momentum. Um, yeah, let's move Toronto up. I mean, this isn't serious. No one's here at this point, this far into it. So we'll just keep it light. We'll keep it fresh. Um, so one thing I will say if there's one single person that is still listening, and I sound like a broken record, but it is what it is. I did this with no notes. I have a whole, not script, but I have a whole agenda on Google Drive. And if you're looking at my screen right now, you see all I have up is the Zoom that you can now see, and you can see my tier ranking I'm doing. Just because I didn't want to be unprofessional, if you will. I have a whole Google Drive with notes on each team. I don't have that out right now. I didn't want to be switching from tab to tab and bringing up my notes. So you got kind of a very, very watered down version of what I was hoping this would be. But this is practice. This season is, if I post this in the morning when I wake up, it'll be October 11th. So the season starts tomorrow, um, October 12th, I believe. Yeah, so we'll be one day away when this comes out, hopefully. Um, I plan in this next week to put out a much better version. Whether I have time to do Western Conference, I would love to. If not, I will tweet that Western Conference tier out as well as an Eastern Conference tier. Maybe I'll make some changes to this one, post my official predictions for the season. I'll be doing all of that at on Twitter at TG underscore NBA. If you don't follow me, give me a follow there. This will be on YouTube, so follow me on my YouTube. I'll always be posting that to my Twitter account, though, my NBA Twitter account. Maybe spam it up on IG once we get more of a finished product. But I appreciate you. Appreciate all of you for listening. Until next time, I am out.